Yeah, I cut it. Babyface on him. Something new. Well, ain't that new. That's what's behind me. You ain't know that. No. Damn, I done left my drink back there.
Warren and his men, Caleb, Danny, Rob, and Ryan, were lurking in the shadows, watching George and Sandra Vickers. After waiting for the right moment, they stepped out of their car and approached the house. Without warning, they stormed inside and overpowered George and Sandra, leaving the residence. After tying them up, Warren and his gang cruelly recorded their son, haunting them as they poured gasoline over their helpless bodies. With cold-hearted intent, they set fire to the house, watching as flames engulfed it before disappearing. The next day, Jimmy Vickers arrived from Afghanistan, only to be met with devastating news. His parents had died in a horrific fire. Grief-stricken, he barely had time to process his loss before receiving a call from his best friend, Rick, a police officer. At that moment, Rick expressed his deep condolences and assured Jimmy that he would do everything in his power to find those responsible for his parents' ruin. Determined to uncover the truth, Jimmy visited a local bar near his home, hoping to gather clues about what had happened on the pavement. At the bar, he approached the bartender, Terry Grobbs, and ordered a drink. As he sipped, he pressed Terry for details about the attack on his parents. However, Terry hesitated, clearly afraid to talk. He avoided Jimmy's questions, not wanting to get tangled up with the ruthless gangsters. Sensing the bartender's reluctance, however, Warren tricked them, claiming they didn't have enough money for drugs. When they protested, the young man was beaten brutally. The terrified girl, desperate to get what she came for, was forced to submit to Warren's demands in exchange for drugs. Several days later, Jimmy is seen in a cafe, sipping his coffee, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. A man inside the cafe and another across the street seemed to be keeping an eye on him. As he pondered their presence, his phone rang. It was Rick. In response, Jimmy quickly told him the name of his car. Inside the car, Rick shared crucial information. He revealed that Warren's car had been spotted near Jimmy's parents' house on the night of the murders. He also explained how George had intervened to stop a robbery committed by Warren's team. To back up his claims, Rick handed Jimmy a flash drive containing surveillance footage from the night of the robbery. That night, filled with uncontrollable rage, Jimmy headed to the address Grill. At the same time, Warren was at a fitness center, finishing his workout. Jimmy parked nearby, waiting patiently for him to come out. Eventually, Warren left the gym and walked toward his car, ready to head home. Just as he was about to drive away, Jimmy deliberately crashed into his car. Enraged, Warren got out to confront the driver, only to be met with a vicious surprise. Jimmy sprang from his vehicle and attacked him, beating him mercilessly. Once Warren was unconscious, Jimmy dragged him away, covering his head before taking him to an unknown location. When Warren regained consciousness, he found himself tied up inside a car. Fear flashed across his face as he realized the situation. Jimmy, filled with fury, demanded the names of the men who had murdered his parents. Warren refused to speak, so Jimmy grabbed a can of gasoline and poured it around the car, making it clear he was willing to do whatever it took to get the truth. After Jimmy threatened Warren, saying he would release him if he revealed the names of those involved in the parents' murder, Warren, terrified and desperate, finally gave in. He spilled the information Jimmy wanted, hoping to save his own life. But Jimmy had no intention of letting him go. Instead, he lit a cigarette, then tossed it onto the gasoline-soaked car, setting it ablaze with Warren still trapped inside. Without a hint of remorse, Jimmy turned his back on the burning car and drove away, heading straight to Moby's house. Upon arriving, their conversation quickly turned into an argument. As tensions rose, Jimmy decided to leave. But as he stood up, Morgan's eyes caught sight of deep brown on his neck. Concerned, she insisted that he stay and let her treat him before going in. As she carefully cleaned and dressed his wound, the tension between them softened. Morgan and Jimmy asked what had happened, but Jimmy only gave a vague response, saying it was complicated. Sensing his reluctance to talk, she chose not to push further. While she was tending to him, Jimmy noticed the divorce papers sitting on the table. Without hesitation, he stated that he would not sign them. It was ironic, considering he was the one who had initially filed the divorce. His words created an awkward silence between them, and feeling the shift in the mood, Jimmy got up to leave. Before he could walk out, Morgan offered to do something. After a brief hesitation, he accepted, and they silently agreed to let them know. The next morning, Morgan stopped by a cafe, where a news broadcast on television caught her attention. The screen displayed a breaking story. Warren had been found dead in a burnout call. At the crime scene, police officers and journalists crowded the area, investigating the shocking murder. Meanwhile, at Warren's headquarters, Rob was furious, unable to accept the brutal death of the boss. He turned to Ryan, expressing his anger and suspicion. The identity of Warren's killer was still unknown, but Rob had his doubts. He suspected Caleb of betraying him and taking Warren out. That night, determined to uncover the truth, Rob and Ryan stormed into Caleb's house, guns drawn, demanding answers. Caleb, caught off guard, swore he had nothing to do with Warren's murder. Suddenly, his girlfriend appeared from behind, pointing a gun at Rob and Ryan. Forced to back down, they let him go, but not without a warning. Rob made it clear if Caleb was lying, they would return, and next time, there would be no mercy. On the other hand, Jimmy, still restless and filled with questions, finally decided to check the flash drive verification. He plugged it in and watched the surveillance footage. His eyes narrowed as he saw his father, George, stepping in to protect a woman from a violent alarm. Jimmy's anger burned even brighter after watching the tape. The painful memories of his parents' murder fueled his desire for revenge, and he couldn't wait any longer to make the killers pay. Determined, he sought out Rick to gather information about the related murders. When Jimmy met Rick, he immediately asked for the addresses of the young culprits. However, Rick was deeply concerned about Jimmy's murder. He warned him that seeking revenge was incredibly dangerous and urged him to let the police handle the case instead. He believed that justice should be served through legal means. But Jimmy refused to believe. He couldn't accept the idea that his parents' murderers would only receive a prison sentence. To him, that was not real. At that moment, Rick tried to reason, saying that revenge would only lead to an endless cycle of violence. However, Jimmy remained firm. He had lost faith in the legal system, believing that many officers ignored the pleas of ordinary people. Before leaving, he made it clear that he would stop at nothing to avenge his parents. Meanwhile, Riff was assigned to investigate a robbery that had ended in murder. As part of his investigation, he visited the victim's widow, Mrs. Gilbert, hoping to get a description of the attack. But she struggled to recall any details because the attack had happened so quickly. With no solid leads, Riff turned to his superior, Spencer, for guidance. Unfortunately, Spencer was dismissive of the case. I trust quality products from advance and always show up. All the right way.
I didn't see the first one.
He brushed it off.
That really did not.
Another routine robbery, and even made an insensitive relief Spencer would only damage the police force of the conviction. He urged James to walk away from the job and leave Jimmy alone. As Rick left, James sat in silence, clearly thinking over everything he had just done. Later that day, Spencer arrived at a restaurant for a meal, but his peace was short-lived. A journalist named Julia approached him, pressing for details about Jim's murder case. Annoyed by her persistence, Spencer scowled and abruptly left the restaurant, refusing to engage with her. That night, at a crowded bar, Ryan was enjoying himself, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Suddenly, a waiter handed him an envelope. Inside, he found a chilling photograph. It was Danny's lifeless body. Panic surged through him as he nervously glanced around. His heart nearly stopped when he spotted Jimmy watching him across the room. Fear took over, and without hesitation, Ryan bolted out of the room with Jimmy following close. Ryan sped through the streets, desperately trying to escape as Jimmy pursued him in a car. He swerved around corners and raced through empty roads, but his luck ran out when he found himself trapped in a dead-end alley, blocked by tall trees. Before he could react, Jimmy got out of his car, stormed toward him, and knocked him unconscious with a heavy hand. When Ryan regained consciousness, panic set in. His hands were tightly bound to the back of the car, while his feet were shackled with iron chains. Trembling, he looked up at Jimmy with fear in his eyes and begged for mercy. He apologized repeatedly, pleading for his life. But Jimmy remained cold and silent, unmoved by his words. Without hesitation, Jimmy got into the car, started the engine, and stepped on the gas. The vehicle jerked forward, dragging Ryan along the road. His screams echoed through the empty alley, but they faded quickly. Within moments, his body went limp, lifeless. Once Jimmy was certain that Ryan was dead, he brought the car to a stop, unfastened the chains, and left the scene without looking back. The next morning, Spencer met with his superior on a bridge to discuss the ongoing case. His boss reminded him of the urgency of solving it and emphasized that he needed to bring the killer to justice as soon as possible. Later, Spencer sat in a coffee shop, lost in thought, trying to figure out the best way to track down and arrest Jimmy. Meanwhile, Colonel Leach, determined to help Jimmy avoid capture, happened to enter the same coffee shop. As he placed his order, he spotted Spencer and approached him. Leach attempted to start a conversation, but Spencer, not recognizing him, barely acknowledged his presence. Undeterred, Leach pressed on. He firmly told Spencer that Jimmy was one of his men and warned him not to interfere. Spencer,